I remember so clearly running into the house, down the hall, up to my parents' door, pounding on the door and yelling out, "There are mountains on the moon! There are mountains on the moon!" And then hearing my dad's sleepy voice within grumbling, well, of course there are mountains on the moon!" That event was just one of many during that first summer when I had my first little telescope, and I would stay up way past bedtime, past midnight, and explore the solar system and the galaxies beyond, the stars in the sky with my little tiny telescope. The winter nights were the best. Nothing better than going through the constellation Orion. What a place to explore. But anyway, the point I want to make is that there are indeed mountains on the moon. And I was thinking about it this morning again, after all these years, as I was walking before dawn this morning, and I was seeing the moon. I may be able to see it now. It's behind me. Can you see it? It's right up there. There it is. Got my finger right there. And I was looking at the moon this morning as I was walking. It was much clearer then. It was completely dark out. And I was looking at the moon, and I was thinking about, hello boys, good morning. And I was thinking about the mountains again. I could see them clearly. I could see the lines on the mountains, the ranges, and the darker areas and the lighter areas. And I was thinking about poor old Galileo. You know, Galileo, the guy that revolutionized everything. And how, well, I was met with the simple statement of course there are mountains on the moon when I announced my discovery, because I didn't know there were mountains on the moon. In fact, I'll just a little more before I go into Galileo. I did not know that. I knew the mountain was a rough surface there. I could see that, but when I actually looking through that telescope that one particular night, I actually could see in the darkness there. There was the dark, shadowy area. I could see, these boys are saying Ohio gozaimasu to me. I should say good morning to them as well. Ohio gozaimasu. I could see in the darkness there, I could see this one mountain peeking up through the night on the surface of the moon. Now imagine that. So that was what told me clearly there were mountains on the moon, was when I could see the actual peak of a mountain rising up from a valley on the moon's surface. And I knew that the bottom part of that mountain was in night, in twilight down there, and the upper part was blazing sunlight. And I've seen that in the mountains here in Japan, where it's all dark around, and the peak of Mount Fuji will be in blistering, beautiful light. And that's what I was seeing on the moon. That's what was getting me so excited. Galileo discovered the same thing, but his reception was not nearly as simple as mine. When Galileo used one of his earliest telescopes to gaze at the moon, and he noticed exactly what I saw there too, what I saw so many centuries later, that the moon was indeed not a perfect smooth surface, but indeed a rough surface with mountains and valleys and ridges and craters and the like. He got quite excited. He must have ran through his chateau as well, yelling, "Mountains on the moon, mountains on the moon!" But what he got for his trouble was a lifetime of suffering, imprisonment, and a threat of death. And this is because in Galileo's time, the philosophers and thinkers of the time believed that the heavens were a perfect celestial sphere, turning in perfect circles, orbs of the heavens, planets and stars and the sun and all of that stuff moving, and that it was perfection itself. That the corruption of the world around us was limited to Earth. That up above in the sphere of the heavens, that all was perfect. And for Galileo to then claim that the moon was indeed a pockmarked, rough surface was akin to heresy. Well, was heresy. And he suffered greatly for his trouble. Now, the thought that I then entertained further as I was walking along this morning, I was looking at the moon, and I can still see it now, it's right up there, and I was looking at the moon, and I was thinking to myself, I don't need a telescope to see that the darn thing isn't perfect. Look at the thing. Maybe you can even tell now even in the morning light here. You can see, if you just look at it, the moon is it's like a Dalmatian in a way. It's got the darker patches and the lighter patches, and there's rough surfaces. And even this morning, the light was just perfect. I could see the twilight shadow coursing down the middle of the moon there, the one side there, not quite the middle, and I could see it a little bit ragged on one edge. And that ragged surface obviously meant that there was some distortion on the surface that was causing that shadow. So it became clear to me that the observers prior to Galileo could have easily determined that the moon was no perfect sphere. And also, there was further evidence, the evidence that was later credited by Kepler and Brahe about the elliptical nature of the orbits of the planets. I mean, if you could just look at the planets, even without those theories, you could just look at the motion of the planets, and you can see they wander around. In fact, the word planet, basically, I believe it comes from the origin of like a wandering star. You know, it's basically because the planets don't move in perfect circles. They go here, and then they come back, and then they keep on going around, and then they come back, and it all has to do with the way that they're moving in ellipses. So the heavens certainly are not perfect, and we didn't need Galileo's telescope to tell us that was the case. So why were so many of the systems of thinking from in medieval Europe and almost into modern times based upon this theory of the perfect spheres of heaven? Well, it must be because they didn't want to. The people that were observing didn't want to see what was clearly before their eyes. They didn't need Galileo's telescope, and when Galileo showed up and gave conclusive evidence that the moon has mountains, they still didn't want to see. So what I'm going to take from that is a little bit of a lesson from my early experience as a youth, and from the experience of Galileo, and the experience of this morning's walk. Is I'm going to be asking myself, what systems of thought do I maintain? What theories and ideas do I have in my own life that I take so for granted that I may be ignoring the evidence closest to me? And I was thinking that probably the best way to find in such a search, the best way to find candidates for such discrimination are to look at the ideas and beliefs that we hold most dear, the ones that are closest to us, because it seems to be that the stuff that we are least likely or least willing to let go of, that's the stuff that we are going to ignore evidence to the contrary of. Well, there we go, with the sun rising and a new day dawning, and I thought, oh, isn't this great? The sun's over here and the moon's over there. You can almost have a solar perspective. You can almost see us like standing on the top of a mountain looking at a great vista as we have these celestial bodies moving around, or we're moving around them and they're moving around us. Amazing stuff. Time to get on to work, everybody. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Take care.